Hello folks, welcome to my other absolute beginner video series tutorial in watercolors with me. Last week we learned how to make objects look 3D in watercolors. This week we're going to learn how to paint skies. I'll provide all the practice materials. Check my video description for downloading it. There's a lot of different kind of skies out there if you go out in nature, and you can encounter a lot of things out there. But the first sky we're going to look into it is a flat sky. So there's no clouds in it. This is just a pure gradient wash from Cobalt Blue, and I'm introducing a little bit of greenish wash, and I'm going to be warm up the wash using yellow ochre and cadmium orange at the bottom because that gives the evening glow in distance, and I'm going to add the buildings at the background. So this picture was taken around 3 to 4 o'clock in the evening and in a summer day. Before jumping on to this how to paint skies video, I highly recommend learning how to do washes properly, and I do have a tutorial on how to do washes in my YouTube channel. You can see the video tutorial link at the top. And I'm gonna zap a city because it kind of looks really weak when I have just the sky, so I'm just adding some buildings here and there in distance just to add some things. So the main point of doing this sky is a flat sky, so let's jump on to the next sky. So the next sky we're gonna look at it, it's called bed of clouds, and this is also my favorite thing to paint because I always think about marshmallow whenever I paint these clouds, and it can also show a lot of atmospheric perspective when you paint these clouds. So this also have a little bit of value, and you can also create distance in these clouds. So I'm going to create a lot of different shapes first by using Cobalt Blue. So this is just to get some shapes. I'm going to leave some white bits, and I'm making sure my pigment consistency are really thick at the top. What I mean by that, I'm going to use a lot of paint in my brush with the less water in my brush. You could see I'm creating a lot of edges, just rotating my brush here and there. So I'm going to create a little bit of variations now. So you could see at the bottom what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the same thing. So literally by leaving white space, you could create a lot of shapes and varieties in the clouds. That's a beautiful thing about painting clouds. You can create a variety of shapes because cloud doesn't have a certain shape to it. So we tackled the first part by using creating value from darker to bottom. So now let's paint the cloud. So I wet the paper wherever I want my softer edges with clean brush with water in it. So now I'm going to put a gray value on the cloud. So this will act as our mid value. So you could see I'm using you can use any kind of neutral grays. Before it's drying out, I'm going to put another darker value on it. So I'm doing the exact same thing on the second cloud as well. So I wet the paper and I'm putting a darker value on it. So this gives a rounder forms for the clouds, and it kind of looks like a marshmallow, and it kind of looks like a fluffy cloud, and this is my favorite thing to paint. So I will do the exact same thing for other clouds as well, but as it goes in the distance, I'll reduce my values. I wouldn't put a lot of darker values on it. And you can also soften by using clean water in your brush, and you can also wipe across the paint you painted, and it will give a softer transition as well. So I went ahead and I did the same process on other clouds. So now let's break up the clouds at the top part. So I'm using white gouache paint and with a little tiny brush. So this will give beautiful hard edges, and it gives like a really expressive stroke on our clouds. So that's why I'm doing it, and when I do it, I'll only show it on certain clouds, not every other clouds, because I picked 2 or 3 and I would think that's my Euro clouds, then I will paint on that. And let's move on to the next cloud. So the next the sky we're going to look at is stormy, and it happens and when there's a storm or a thunderstorm and when there's a storm weather. And I'm also pacing this video in such a way that we went from simplest to a little bit of hard, and it's going to get harder as you go. So I want to face it so that as a beginner you get a chance to practice it and you can get better at it. Being said that, I will provide all the references for the skies in the drawing template below, so you guys can download it and practice too as well. So now I'm going to introduce a little bit of a darker cloud because in storm weather they tend to have a darker pigment of clouds, and it also have a lot of forms in our sky as well, so I'm going to do that. For doing that, I'm using French Ultramarine Blue, Cobalt Blue, and at the bottom you could see I introduced a little bit of neutral tint because I want to create this form in our clouds. So now I'm taking tissue paper and I'm taking off some of the paint by going through really fast. So this creates something called God rays or light rays, and which shows lighting in our clouds. So, and this will make really atmospheric clouds when you see this from distance. So I'm jumped on to the next bit of cloud bed, and this one I'm doing the exact same thing, but I'm wearing the shapes and leaving a lot of white bits. And these bits we can also paint out at the end, and this white bits will create a little bit of a cloud separation from one cloud to the other. So at the bottom I want to create a little bit of atmosphere, so I wet the paper and I'm painting on top of it, so that will give a softer edge of clouds as well. So the same thing, I'm taking tissue paper and I also want the light to penetrate through this cloud, and it creates a beautiful God rays in our clouds. I left the painting dry for a bit. Now I noticed that once it dried out, it lacked a little bit of form, so it's the same thing. I'm going to wet the paper and I'm going to paint the darker pigment at the bottom of the clouds. It's the same thing what we did with marshmallow or atmospheric clouds or cloud beds, and it's the same concept. Every painting, every skies you do, it's going to create a form of round shape, so you're going to have a darker pigment at the bottom and a mid-tone and a lighter tone at the top. So I will do the same process on other clouds as well, and until I'm happy with it. So we're going to do the exact same thing what we did with bird out clouds. So I'm going to take a white gouache paint and I'm going to bring out highlights here and there. When I do it, I want to simplify the clouds, and because there's a lot of shapes happening in my reference, but I simplify it in a way that I capture the essence of the cloud, and I also don't go overboard with my highlights as well. And you could see, and we created a perfect, stormy skies, and it looks magnificent. So the next sky we're going to paint is called soft skies, and soft skies are really easy and fun to paint because it paints by itself, and it's also a quite easy process as well. So I'll take a clean brush and clean water, and I'll wet the paper, and I'll just go with different brush strokes, rotating my brush, and I do leave a little bit of white edges here and there because that gives a little bit of edge variations in our skies, and that will make our painting a little bit interesting, and also for the sky as well. And I'll bring it all the way to the bottom. So now you can see I'm putting paint on there. Once you put the paint on the paper, since we wet the paper, and it will give this softer transition and it blends by itself. And one part I'm going to do a soft sky, it's going to have a lot of soft transitions, and the next one I'm going to have a little bit of edge variation as well as soft skies in it. And you can see I'm also mixing a lot of colors like yellow ochre, and I'm using cadmium orange, and you can see it looks soft, and I also introduce a little bit of hard edges, and yet it looks interesting. And when you do this soft sky, you can put as much as colors you want, then you would dry out, then you go on outer edges. That's how it works. So once I'm happy with it, you can see I'm also warm up the wash by putting purple at the end of the sky as well. So I went ahead and dried out my wash, and this is how it looks like, and it looks a little bit interesting. So I'm going to add a little bit of details here and there to create some cityscape at the background, and let's call this done, and let's move on to the next one. So the next sky we're going to look at is called late evening skies, and this also have quite a lot of gradient as the first flat sky, but it will have darker clouds because the clouds is against the light. So I used quite a little bit of gradient from warmish blue to green and to orange and dark orange at the bottom, and at the bottom I'll introduce a lot of French Ultramarine Blue to get a horizontal line. I did let the watercolor paper dry a bit because I want to get that horizontal line properly. So I'm introducing a little bit of French Ultramarine Blue at the bottom, and you can see there's quite a bit of gradient from top to bottom. So for the water, I'm going to use a simple stroke. You could use blue or anything like that. So I'm using a little bit of green and cobalt blue in it. So let's start with the darker sky. So this is the same thing like storm skies what we did. So this corner I have only one cloud, like a bigger cloud, and which is against the light. And as soon as we put that cloud there against that light light background, the whole sky came alive. And you can also use to take a tissue paper and to get rid of some paint there, because that's where our source of light, that's sunlight. So at the bottom, I'm going to have the same color, but I'm adding a little bit of white paint in it so that I can get a lighter sky at the bottom. So that also creates a little bit of distance. So we're going to do the exact same thing what we did with the storm sky. So I'm going to take a tissue paper and take some light rays from top to bottom. And I'm also taking a little bit of white paint, and I'm also trying to create some form at the top of the clouds as well. I tried to simplify this late evening skies as much as simple as possible so that you guys can follow with me. So one of the last step, that will make this sky a little bit more interesting and the light peek through is adding some white paint on top of it. So the other trick is to, at the top you could see there's a lot of yellow ochre peeking through. So I would mix yellow ochre and a little bit of white paint in it and create a little bit of yellow ochre, yellow paint on it, and you can paint at the top, and it also gives a little bit of light glistening at the top of the clouds. For the bottom there is a lot of orange light, so I'm mixing white paint with orange paint in it, so that also gives a little bit of light peeking through in the clouds, and that makes this overall interesting, pretty nice. So I tried to do this step, putting some yellow ochre for the rays, and it didn't turn out pretty good, so I take a tissue paper and removed it. So that's all you needed. So now it's your turn. Take all my references, download it from the video description, and practice it, and let's see what you can come up with. If you ended up painting one of these skies with my reference, please share with me, and I like to check it out, and I love to share with my subscribers as well. Thanks again for watching this how to paint skies for absolute beginner video tutorial with me. And if you have any other questions regarding this video, comment below or write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com. But if you want to cover any other subjects in watercolors, you can comment below, or you can also write me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from the channel. And good luck with your painting, folks.